Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
You goddamn communist heathen, you had best sound off that you love the Virgin Mary, or I'm gonna stomp your guts out. Now, you do love the Virgin Mary, don't you?
Visit us at IHateCritics.net, IHateCritics.com, Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast.com. We're on Facebook. We also have a Facebook group, Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. Our Twitter and Instagram handles are Critics Pod. There you can participate in our top fives, watch trailers. Apparently I didn't post one. I thought I did. I was on vacation this week and I didn't have the best internet access. I apologize. And, you know, Sean's reviews will interact with each other. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Complaining about, what's it called? Movie Pass? Almost called it Box Office Mojo for a second. Yeah, but social media, follow us there, like us, whatever. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all your podcatchers. If you could go to Apple Podcasts, though, subscribe to the show. Leave a rating and review. We'll read it on the air. It helps us move up the charts. And then there's Patreon. IHateCritics.net/Patreon. That's the best way to support the podcast. You get a credit on the show. Once I get time to calm down, I'll work on merch. And then we do bonus podcasts. We released one this week since I was out of town where we talked about Universal Soldiers and played Flickchart and whatnot. So, yeah, be a Patreon supporter. If you don't want to do Patreon, I'm going to put a PayPal link because I think that might be the easiest way to get people to buy the bonus episodes. Because Bandcamp's just too hard. And then if you just want to donate via PayPal instead of Patreon, that'll be there as well, I guess. But again, I got to put that all up and it takes time. So I will do my best to get that up there. The trailer I was going to post was called Lizzie. It's about the Lizzie Borden story where Chloe Sevigny plays Lizzie and Kristen Stewart is an assistant or I don't know, like a housekeeper or something like that, and they orchestrate the murder, blah, blah, blah. Looks kind of neat. I think it's clearly taking liberties and doing their own version of it.
There have been a number of film adaptations of this story. Just recently, in fact, Lifetime was in, I don't know, I wouldn't say they were in contention for awards, but they were aiming for awards with one with Christina Ricci as Lizzie Borden. Not that all that long ago. But this is a story that people find very appealing. They're very fascinated by this, about, you know, her guilt. I think the idea of a female serial killer, I don't know if she's a serial killer per se, but a female murderer, especially on the scale of Lizzie Borden, and Axe certainly gets a lot of people's attention. And so there's a lot of people who remain, and probably will always remain, fascinated by that story.
And this is kind of like a modern take on it. Like, I'm pretty sure Kristen Stewart and Chloe Sevigny have a lesbian relationship, and they definitely are doing their own thing with the story. Both of them are kind of artsy actresses, and they tend to take weird artsy movies, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. I don't know. If there's buzz, I'll see it. If there's not, I might still see it. I don't know. We'll see. But nobody watched it because I didn't post it, so I apologize for that. And then Movie Pass has come around again with their new. I think we've now been subscribed for a year, and I don't know if you guys got the notification or not. Their new plan is with the $9.95 a month or $9.99, whatever it is. You get 3 movies, no more peak pricing, and then after that, you get $5 off the next movie.
That sound you hear is Josh's gears grinding.
Yeah, I'm exhausted with it. I said on the podcast last week what I felt about them, so fine. It's still, if they do it this way, it's a deal, but where's the money from last month? Or where they're going to have certain movies too, like for example The Meg coming up next week is not going to be available to see. That's the only part of that you may have missed from that email that you didn't mention before, is that some major motion pictures are not going to be available for you to see. So sure, no peak pricing, but you just can't see certain things. Well, okay, what would be the point then?
Did
You'd
it
like us to
specifically
go see very simple films that they barely bring there on Tuesday afternoons. All right, fine.
Did they say the Meg wouldn't be part of it?
Correct.
I
Mission
didn't-
Impossible was obviously...
Well, no, but did it actually specifically say that in the
Yes,
email? I did not see that part.
that may have been... I may be combining the email with the story that I saw, but the Meg is not going to be a part of it.
Because the story has changed.
Right.
They have been changing their plan all along. So I don't know if old stories still exist with the new ones or not yet. So
Their ability to change course is pretty remarkable for what is supposed to be a pretty significantly large business, a multi-million-dollar business. They change on a dime, and they get that email out to you the same day. It's oddly, strangely impressive. But our friend Jason from New Mexico told a story on Facebook today about trying to go see a movie, and he was I think he might have been Mission Impossible, I'm not sure which one, but he said that there were just no movies available. He was near 2 different movie theaters where he was, and he couldn't find one single movie available on MoviePass.
In Davenport this past weekend, I went to see 8th Grade. Not only was that not available, not a single showing was available on Saturday. So, piss off, MoviePass.
they've only saved us dozens of dollars over the past year.
Of course. Then that should make me satisfied.
I mean, and I mentioned this last week. Netflix went through similar issues. The big difference was they weren't purging money, but they saw that coming, and a lot of the studios were pulling out of their service. Because if you remember, at one point you could get like everything on streaming very briefly.
Very briefly.
So yeah, I'm just curious. We'll see how it goes. I'd like a service like this to last, at least last until all the theaters start doing it or something. That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
I did check out the Cinemark movie club or whatnot to see what that involved, and if it's a theater that I would want to go to often, I think that would be a fine plan as part of your movie-going month.
Yeah. And that's more based on you get a slightly better price on the movies, but it's largely popcorn and shit.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the MoviePass story will keep coming up week after week, so we'll see how that goes. But let's jump to our new movies this week. The most successful, even though I believe it underperformed, is Christopher Robin.
Yeah, and you're right, about it underperforming. And I was talking about this with some other people about the marketing of this film and the name Christopher Robin specifically, how that didn't hurt the marketing, but it definitely held it back from the kind of wide audience that they were hoping for. They wanted to reach out and make sure they made a movie that would get an older teenage audience perhaps in there, or at least just a slightly older audience in there. And they knew if they put Winnie the Pooh in the title, that would automatically label it as a movie for 5-year-olds. And so they needed to call it Christopher Robin. But in calling it Christopher Robin, that they didn't communicate well enough to parents that, hey, Winnie the Pooh's in the movie and bring your children to this. And so there were plenty of children who went to see it, and there are plenty of families that went to see it. And it's definitely a family movie. But that failure to connect in the marketing kind of held this movie back from probably being as big as it could have been, box office-wise. But it deserved a big box office because this is a really lovely film. This is a really kind of a wonderful movie. Ewan McGregor plays Christopher Robin, the grown-up Christopher Robin, years after he's left the 100-acre wood. He's been to war. He's grown up and has a job at a luggage factory where he's trying to decide the fate of everybody who works for him. He's got to crunch the numbers, and he's got to miss this weekend with his family away so he can crunch the numbers and see who's going to get fired and who's not. It's a very sad and depressing sort of thing. And into this crisis that he's in comes Winnie the Pooh, his old friend, who comes through a door into London. The door that used to go from the 100-acre wood into his backyard now goes into London because this is where Pooh needs to be. Pooh can't find all of his friends from the 100-acre wood. They've gone missing, and he needs Christopher Robin to come help him. And really, it's about drawing Christopher Robin back into the 100-acre wood to show him that the things that he's currently worried about are not necessarily the things he needs to be worried about. And it's a very standard story. That's a very typical story, but I thought they handled it very well. I thought this is a wonderfully wonderfully brilliant creative team. We've got Mark Forster directing here, who did a similar story with Finding Neverland. This is a very similar idea to Finding Neverland, very kind of nebulously quirky and cute and sweet. And I think he was the right choice for this. But then the couple of writers that they had are pretty spectacularly good writers. The writer of Hidden Figures, I can't remember the guys. The one guy is kind of not a guy you would expect to write Winnie the Pooh. He wrote this movie, and the work that they did together is pretty great. So these characters are kind of wonderful. The dialogue is kind of wonderful, and there's a number of just those classically Winnie the Pooh things that you remember. Tigger does his Tigger song, and Eeyore is sad, and Rabbit is worried. Kanga and Roo are adorable. So all of the elements are there, and I was moved by it. It was predictable, but it was also sweet and warm, and I like it. I'm a fan.
So it wasn't about him being crazy.
It was not about him being crazy, no.
That would have been so much better.
Just him in a padded room, just bouncing off the walls, talking to Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, just keep going back and forth. It's a Tigger song. Now there's your movie and there's your box office success.
Christopher Robin is played by Tobin Bell.
Ewan McGregor would be fine. Directed by Danny Boyle.
Somehow there's meth involved. That's how he sees Winnie the Pooh.
It's Train Spotting 3.
It could work.
Bob does not do sweet. He does not do sweet.
It's not that I don't do it, but I remember when the Peanuts movie came out, and I kind of ruined that for us. Like, you went through and did this great review of it, and I'm like, yeah, but he's going to grow up and be worthless. I want to see that movie where Charlie Brown is an adult. Ewan McGregor can play him, I guess, but you really need kind of a...
Didn't they do that as a gag on Family Guy? Growing up,
I never really watched
Grown Up Charlie Brown.
Probably that sounds like something they do.
Yeah.
He shows up at a party. He's got tattoos and he brought a hooker with him.
And Peppermint Patty comes in with her partner. Yeah, I remember that.
See, it wouldn't really be that. It'd be more like one of us. Josh has this great story of going to Starbucks where the person in front of him paid for his order or whatever, so he was going to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And it was like a $45 order.
Like, well, I guess that can't be nice today.
That's something that would happen to Charlie Brown in real life. You put that in the movie. You don't get to have hookers involved.
So we're clear, you just called Charlie Brown a loser and compared him to Josh.
No.
I see the difference, but I understand where you could discern that.
I went out of my way to say it could be any one of us.
But
that story is just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, it was probably like, what the fuck? But when you look back on it, you just got to laugh, don't you? Or no?
I laugh at it because of the way that you framed it for me. Like, only this can happen to you. Yeah, that's true. We're people like me.
Every time you do something nice. And that doesn't make him a loser.
No.
The hookers make him a loser. And that's Seth MacFarlane's thing, not mine. All right, so we've dragged on that Christopher Robin. Let's go to, what's the next most successful? Spy Who Dumped Me.
Yes, The Spy Who Dumped Me. Mila Kunis, Kate McKinnon. I don't know any of the creative team behind this one. I didn't look them up because this is not that kind of movie. It's more in line with like a Life of the Party, actually, which is, again, a movie that wasn't very well directed, but it was really funny because the characters and the actors involved are very funny. And this is the case here. This is a very predictable, derivative sort of comedy, but it's pretty funny because when they stop down to riff in this movie, they're funny doing it. Kate McKinnon is pretty great at riffing. The idea here is that Mila Kunis is dating a spy who dumps her. She finds out then that he's a spy, and something happens to incapacitate him, and she takes up his mission overseas. And she gets into all sorts of hijinks. But again, this story doesn't really matter. It's about the stopping down and the riffing on various different topics, and the R-rated riffing specifically. And the thing that impressed me is that Mila Kunis can really hang, and she's getting better all the time when it comes to kind of hanging with people who are pretty much better than she is at this. She's a dramatic actress. I mean, no, she started in comedy, but that her talent seems to be more towards playing it straight. And when she's opposite Kristen Bell and Catherine Hahn, she's leaving the comedic heavy lifting to them for the most part. She'll do a few here, but she's mostly left to be the straight person. And here she's hanging right there with Kate McKinnon. She's doing just as many riffs as Kate is, and they're good riffs. And like I said, the movie made me laugh a lot. Is it a good movie, like from a objective perspective? No, because it's sloppy and not particularly well directed, not particularly well written, predictable. But it's funny enough for me to go, I don't mind all that much. This is pretty much the exact same review I gave to Life of the Party.
Yeah, and I can't remember what Box Office Mojo compared it to, Hot Pursuit or something like that. I really like Kate McKinnon.
Hey, Hot Pursuit.
In terms of
garbage right there.
In terms of success, I guess, not necessarily the movie itself, but it's on pace to probably bring in 35 total. It's at 13 million now. I like Kate McKinnon a lot. I'd like her to have the Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy type career, but I don't. She hasn't really had that huge success on her own yet, and that's what kind of sucks.
Yeah, and this I thought maybe this might be it because she's such a breakout and she's so very, very funny in this. But yeah, this is not a strong success based on selling her name. But it's mostly this, like I said, it's Mila Kunis's starring title.
Yeah,
I was wondering if they treated this movie like a spoof in a way, where like Spy. Paul Feig's Spy was more of a kind of a spoof. They even had something of a Bond riff throughout the film and a song and whatnot. Did they do something similar to that? Because obviously they're riffing off of the Bond title.
I think a little, but it was so clumsy that I didn't really notice it too much.
Okay.
They're going for a much more straightforward, kind of, I don't know, realistic sort of spy. So not necessarily that kind of glamorous sort of James Bond kind of spy. Justin Theroux's character is much more of a on-the-ground kind of everyday spy. And
Justin Theroux, I mentioned I was watching Parks and Rec this past week. I've been getting into the show, and he's on a 4-episode run. And I'm saying, "Oh, look, it's Justin Theroux from across the room." I get the Prime Minister of Canada. I'm like, no, it's Justin Trudeau. Thought I'd throw that in there. I've got nothing to contribute for 3 movies.
Hey, at least that's someone know who both of those people are.
Now say Ben Mendelsohn to her and see her eyes roll through the back of her head. Wait a minute. Is that your neighbor?
Quit treating him like Charlie Brown.
Is Ben Mendelsohn our neighbor?
Ben Mendelsohn can play Charlie Brown. Give you his breakout role. I don't even know what he looks like.
He's a high school. Oh, he's your high school principal.
He's been in so much stuff that's been popular. Dark Knight Rises, Ready Player One, Rogue One, and
okay,
people don't know who the hell he is.
When you say Dark Knight Rises, I could name probably 10 people.
Except for him.
Well, no. I'm not even making fun of it yet. I mean, just because you're in a movie doesn't mean it. You know, there's so many people in Dark Knight Rises. Where would he, in terms of star power, or his character?
At that time, I didn't know who he was. I was more interested
He's in the football
character.
stadium.
No, he's the. No, Jesus. I see what you did there. Yeah, walked right into.
Who was he though, for real?
He just held the football for me, and I tried kicking it.
God damn it! I don't want this to be Josh as Charlie Brown. That wasn't my intent.
I got just about as much hair as he does, I suppose, on the dome.
I look more like him than any of us. So let's not. Yeah. Well, who was he in Dark Knight Rises? I won't know more. The football's down for
Thorne, the business guy that Bane touches the cheek of and says, "Do you feel in charge?" You know.
Hey, I'm in therapy like him, so.
Amongst all of us, we'll eke out a Charlie Brown.
The darkest. Let's go top 5 female duos before we move on to their movies.
Put your top 5. Who's your top 5?
Cousin Jeff had Gina Gershon and Elizabeth Berkley in Showgirls. Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin. And Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin in Big Business. Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, Thelma and Louise. Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy, The Heat. And number 1, Mira Sorvino and Lisa Kudrow, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. Beth had a work in process that she got 2/5 of the way through. Number 1, Rebecca De Mornay and Mary Gross in Feds. Number 2, Mary Stuart Masterson and Mary Louise Parker, Fried Green Tomatoes. Uncle Jeff had Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Number 4, Holly Hunter and Anna Paquin, The Piano. 3, Shelley Duvall and Sissy Spacek, Three Women. That's only 2. Kate Winslet.
I thought of that as well, but yeah.
Who did he leave off?
I don't know.
Number 2, Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky, Heavenly Creatures. Number 1, Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn, Death Becomes Her. Sarah Ward had, or 5, Cher and Dion from Clueless. 4, Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood from Sense and Sensibility. Nomi and Crystal from Showgirls. I don't remember how to pronounce their names. It's been so long since I've seen that movie. 2, Thelma and Louise. 1, Romy and Michelle. I had Corky and Violet from Bound. Why did it change to Bloodbound? But it's Bound, Gina Gershon.
Is that the name of a band that you listen to?
No, it's Bloodbound the movie. Somehow every now and then it changes my, I don't know, these MacBooks, if you rest your hand on it, it just checks shit up. Number 4, Susanna and Lisa and Girl Interrupted. 3, Juliet and Pauline, Heavenly Creatures. 2, Enid and Rebecca, Ghost World. And then, because I'm lazy, Thelma and Louise. Josh?
I had a list that I had like defined ones, but I usually copy and paste it before I leave for the week at work, but I forgot it. And thus I left off on purpose Ripley and Newt from Aliens so that I didn't get eye rolls from you guys. 5 is Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin from Big Business. I really enjoyed all 4 of those roles that they played. And Enid and Rebecca from Ghost World. That's a movie I haven't seen in probably 15 years, but I remember really liking it when I did. That was my first time seeing Scarlett Johansson, in fact. 3, Melissa McCarthy and Sandra Bullock in The Heat. Those two just had such great comedic chemistry. I hate to make it so recent, but it's true. I just really enjoyed that because of them. 2 is Juliet and Pauline, or Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky from Heavenly Creatures. Uncle Jeff had a little feature this week talking about that film and how it was kind of a hidden gem, and I agree. It's Peter Jackson's... I mean, you can argue Lord of the Rings is great and everything, but some of his lesser stuff that people don't know as much about, like Heavenly Creatures and The Lovely Bones, really amazing stuff. And number 1 is a film that I've seen because of this podcast, and that's Anna and Elizabeth from Persona, Ingmar Bergman's film. And that one, I'll never forget how that one revealed itself, and I am almost reticent to put this because it makes me sound almost a little too haughty for my position as the fan on this show, but it's true. That one really stuck with me. And in terms of female duos specifically, there's female groups that I really like the Ghostbusters 2016 film. I really like the foursome there, but in terms of duos, that was the most effective.
You're absolutely right about Persona. There would be... That would have been high on my list. I think for me, honestly, the best female duo, though, I got to go with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy in Heat. That's they're perfect together. But then there's Melissa McCarthy and just about anybody, really. Right. Her in Life of the Party with Maya Rudolph is completely hysterical every moment. Her and Miranda Hart, I think it is, from Spy, are a tremendous duo together. Then Ghost World is very high on my list, but also Vicky Cristina Barcelona with Scarlett Johansson and Rebecca Hall. Just amazing.
I was going to put that, but I didn't want
together.
To look perverted.
And then to speak to that, though, an amazing female duo, The Handmaid's Tale. I mean, say what you will about that being a lesbian relationship. That is an incredible duo performance going on there.
I agree.
The show?
Sorry, Handmaiden.
That's why I
The
always
Handmaiden.
forget about it because of the show, The Handmaiden.
Sorry, no, it's called The Handmaiden. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh, the bells.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
That was
Honorable mention.
Honorable
And
mention.
Vicky Cristina Barcelona is very, very good. It's just also very sexy, so it's hard. I don't know. I always feel weird talking about that movie.
Yet you put Bound on there.
Yeah.
All right.
It can't be nothing but. It should have been
Fair enough.
And to me, that's funnier because it's not as good. But my delivery was poor. I apologize. The Darkest Minds.
Oh, yes, The Darkest Minds. I'd really hoped that we were past this thing about young adult fiction with dystopian universes and pretty teenagers who are in a post-apocalyptic world. But no, we're not. We've got another Maze Runner death cure on our hands here. The Darkest Minds is about a group. The story goes that teenagers have developed superpowers, not unlike mutants from X-Men. And you can hear the elevator pitch very easily, like it's X-Men crossed with Hunger Games, and that's done. And here's $50 million. Go make me a movie. And the marketing pitch is just right there in before you even have a story, and it's really annoying that way. And the movie doesn't have really many ideas beyond a marketing pitch. But kids are developing superpowers. Some of them can have telekinesis. Some they can lift things and throw them with their minds. Some control lightning. Some control fire. The lead character, Ruby, she can touch you and she can see everything about your past, and she can manipulate your mind, not like a Jedi mind trick. And she's your hero. And that's pretty much it. There's an evil kid or an evil government. The government's trying to round up the teenagers, but the teenagers are going to learn how to use their power and stop them. And Mandy Moore is in there somehow. It's a mess. It's absolute hot, flaming garbage. It's not the least bit entertaining, and it's just as bad as Maze Runner Death Cure.
Even with Mandy Moore in it.
Yeah, even with
Who
Mandy
would
Moore in
thunk
it.
it?
I know.
I'm a big Mandy Moore fan.
Did she play a teenager?
No. She plays one of the leaders of the Resistance.
So were any of the teenagers 28, 29, 30 years old with gray hair?
I think the lead kid might have had a pretty good receding hairline going on.
That's a little foreshadowing, people.
It's terrible. Don't see it.
Yeah, it's not even going to be in our show notes because I wrote those before the show. And Sean said we had to add it to the show. So
I almost forgot that I saw it. So, I mean,
I actually read through the top 10 movies. I'm like, it can't be in here. We know 8th Grade was a little, indie movie, so it's not going to be in there, but it had to be in there, and it wasn't. So, well, let's just go to 8th Grade then.
yes, 8th Grade, directed and written by comedian Bo Burnham, who is a very popular Netflix special. He was a supporting player in my favorite movie from last year, The Big Sick. And here he's behind the camera and writing a story about a girl who's just finishing 8th grade, about to go into high school. She's been voted most quiet in her class, even though she doesn't feel that she is quiet. She's got her own YouTube channel, and the movie really effectively uses that as a fresh new way to deliver a little bit of exposition. And I loved that as much as it is a device, it's a very good device, and at least it's a device that nobody else has done before. So I got to give him credit for that. And I got to give credit to this incredible young actress, Elsie Fisher, who delivers an amazing performance in this story. It's a relatively simple story. It's a character observation. It's observing a couple of characters, her and her father, played by Josh Hamilton. It's about observing them, not necessarily that there's a very specific plot or storyline going on. She's got an arc. She's growing. But again, there's not a very specific story that you can point to. We're just observing her in her everyday life and the things that she's going through, the way her developing anxieties are defining her life and how they may further define her life down the road. And it's such a smart, sensitive, and very funny movie. And I think it is an incredible watch. I enjoyed every second of it. I thought the acting was amazing. I thought it was very funny on top of that, and very observant, and a movie that feels very fresh and of the moment. It observes these kids in a way that I don't think any other movie has, and that really is quite remarkable.
Josh?
Especially, as you're saying, observing these kids like no one ever has. No one really examines middle schoolers, per se. They may be part of an ensemble, a family that happens to have a middle schooler, but specifically, younger children movies, they're focused more on high school, of course, because you can get away with perhaps a little bit more in terms of storytelling. But some of these same things that happen in this film, they're happening, they have been for a long time, and kids will encounter them. I was really amazed by how good this was. It's probably now my number one for the year, over Sorry to Bother You, and specifically because of how honest they treat her character throughout the entire film. There isn't something that magically happens and she's, super happy all of a sudden because she gets the boy that she's been going after or something, or she gets to be on the cheerleading team. Something cliche that may happen in a lesser film. This one's honest throughout, and she gives such a, I'll call it courageous because I'm lacking other terms, to play it that honest too. No matter what happens to her, she still gets in front of that YouTube camera and still keeps on talking about her life. It's like her own little therapy. But the film also scared me a little bit in that it deals with technology so pervasively, and Instagram specifically, and YouTube, and how that affects children and their psyches. And she only has a couple of views, and she's asking for likes and asking for shares. I'm like, you're in 8th grade. You don't have to worry about any of this shit, honey. And I just wanted to console her through most of the film. But her dad is trying so hard to console her as well. I had forgotten that actor, Josh Hamilton. I haven't seen him since With Honors in 1994. I went home and watched With Honors right afterwards because I remembered him so well from that, but I couldn't think of his name throughout the whole movie. There's just such a good chemistry between those two because it's honest. At no point is there any part where he's playing something cliche, she's playing something cliche. It's just this awkward interaction of a single dad and an 8th grade girl, and how are they going to connect? He's not doing anything egregiously bad. She's not doing anything egregiously bad. They're trying to learn each other still, even after all the time they've been together. There's some dangerous moments that happen, of course, to her in this film because she's in 8th grade and she's coming up on that time where dangerous things could happen to her. And the film doesn't shy away from that, and it makes you as the viewer immersed in what her life is about. So I think it's a magnificent film. As annoyed with Bo Burnham as I am with his comedy, he's got a particular eye behind this camera, and if he keeps making movies like this, I'm on board. I think he's got a great career as a director.
Authenticity and earnestness, they're big things with this generation of kids. I know we grew up much more cynical. We were much more, I know for me, I was defined by hardcore sarcasm to the point where we didn't know anymore when we were being sarcastic. We refused to take anything seriously because of the way we came up. Our parents earnestly believed in fighting against the Vietnam War, and then came us, and we're just going to reject everything with sarcasm. And now we're back to a far more earnest time where people are willing to believe in things, and that's kind of where this character is coming into the world. She's very earnest, very authentic. She doesn't hide behind an armor of sarcasm. She's got no armor at all. She's revealing everything on her channel, and even when she's not trying to, even if she is attempting to conceal it, she doesn't conceal it very well. And that's what's a part of the charm of this character, and the complexity of the performance of Elsie Fisher too, is to realize that you're revealing yourself without seeming like you're revealing yourself. It's a really great actorly trick, and not one that people her age can generally pull off.
Did it take a stand on the social media stuff, or did they just kind of use it as a tool?
Yeah, I think it's specifically used as this is how children her age interact with each other, and this is how much of a part of their life it is. There's a scene involving her and her father eating dinner, for example, and she's got headphones in, and she's looking through things, and she's not really touching her plate, and the father's just trying to talk to her, and I'm sitting there like, why does she have the phone and her headphones on at the table? That shit needs to go away. But well, hold on a second. A lot of kids interact with the world through that way, and so depending on how, she's 13 now,
right?
So it's just different, and I have to adjust my mind thinking about it.
And there is one, like, get off my lawn kind of scene where late in the movie where she confronts a couple of girls who are pretty kind of a one-note joke of always just their heads down and they're on their phone. But the way they handled that scene and the way Elsie Fisher handles that scene really, it makes it far better than just your typical get off my lawn kind of joke.
She had the most precious scene in the movie is a first date of sorts between her and a gentleman her age, and the way that they set this up and the way that this young actor handles this date, because he's so clearly nervous, but they clearly have a connection, a friendly connection first. He's not at all trying to pressure her or anything like that. They're just trying to get to know each other, and they just do it so well. I believed every moment of that scene. Nothing about it seems set up.
I had that date. When I was that, I had exactly that date. I was like, I know that kid. I was that kid. I am him.
Was it Charlie Brown? Was it a Charlie Brown moment?
No. This kid would have no idea. He was as anxious as he is in the scene. He was not angst-ridden or anything like that. So he was a really interesting character.
Yeah.
He didn't get a lot of time in the movie,
completely comfortable with who he was, and it appealed to her as somebody that was trying to be comfortable with who she was.
This movie does have another scene in it that I don't want to spoil, but it ranks right there in the scene with Ron Livingston and Tully. That's the level of emotional connection that this scene had for me, and that level of good. So
nice.
Kind of relate it to something that you can relate to if you haven't seen this movie, but you've seen Tully.
Now, is it for 8th grade girls or is it for everybody?
I mean, the only reason this got an R rating is because there are like 4 F-bombs in the movie. That's the only reason it's R-rated. This movie doesn't belong with an R rating. I think anybody should see it. And actually, on Wednesday of this week, this will be up on Wednesday, right? Tonight, in places.
Yeah.
I know in Des Moines, there are going to be at least 50 places where you can go see this movie for free and without a rating, because they want everybody to get the chance to see this movie. And like I said, 4 F words are the only reason why this is an R-rated film.
Yeah, I strongly thought about when this comes out on Blu-ray or whatnot of showing it to my boy. That's how some of the things that he will experience here going into middle school now, I think that it can't come from me, and so
I'm going to show you new parents. It's this movie. It's no longer the babysitter.
I can say anything I want, but something like this
Right.
really can clarify things for you.
No, I mean, the way you're describing the girl, I mean, it's my daughter's only going into 6th grade, but she just turned 11 yesterday, and she would sit. I mean, when she has friends over, they'll spend the night and they'll talk to each other on their phones next to each other, and it's not even a joke. They really are. Yeah. That's just how they communicate. And the only difference between me and the dad in the movie is I'm like, put the headphones on. I'm sick of the sound. Not at the table, though. Not until she eats her vegetables.
That's all you're offering her.
I know. And that's the problem.
And then we're watching Cannibal Holocaust.
No, raw.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
Our undisputed classic, going along with the 8th grade, is The Blob. Because the actress who played a 13-year-old was, 25, 26? I'm just kidding. I mean, Steve McQueen's like 30 years old in The Blob.
Oh, he looks older than that, to be honest. But
he's actually 28 in this movie, but he's got like gray hair and playing a teenager.
Sure.
The Blob, yes. This is a classic because, of course, in 1988, 30 years ago, The Blob was released, as a remake of it was released. And this one actually came out this weekend 60 years ago. I didn't realize that they'd had that much symmetry. But yeah, this past weekend, 60 years ago, The Blob with Steve McQueen hit theaters. And this is a really great movie. And for a classic kind of B-movie horror film, for a programmer, as they used to call him back in the day, this is pretty great. Steve McQueen owns the screen. He steps on screen, and you just know that guy's a movie star. The eyes, the command, the charisma is all there, even in this silly plot, which finds this thing crashing into Earth. Some guy, of course, has to poke it with a stick, because that's America. You gotta go poke stuff with sticks. It gets loose. It gets on this old guy's arm. He runs out into McQueen and his girlfriend. They take him to the hospital. The thing continues to spread, and eventually it's this big red mass just kind of going all over the city, absorbing people. And, of course, that is a very thinly veiled metaphor for the spread of communism. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, but it's 1958. The Red Menace, if you get it, slowly spreading over a small town, taking over. Yeah, it was it was a very thinly veiled Cold War metaphor. Not very well done in that way, but it's there. And it just adds another aspect, though. And I really like this movie. I know it's a B movie. I know it's not particularly well directed, but I think Steve McQueen is a real standout. He looks like a movie star. This was only his second feature lead performance, and his third overall feature film. And I thought his command of the screen was incredible. And I like the way the movie proceeds. It has a very specific set of rules. It plays out those rules as cleverly as it possibly could for the limitations of its own technology, which is charming. I found the miniature scenes that they use in this to be rather charming. There's the movie theater scene where they just basically take the windows of the movie theater and just kind of take a little small version of that and put it over a Jell-O mold and just kind of press it down. I found that charming. It reminded me of Ed Wood. I enjoyed that. I dig this movie, and of course it still is a kind of a relevant movie. I mean, the character of Blobby in Hotel Transylvania is based off of the Blob. They're not the same color, but they're the same notion. It's the same inspiration.
Well, it's not. I mean, Annihilation in a lot of ways, in a different way, but is very much like the Blob, and it could very well be a sequel if they wanted it to be. The way it looked blobby, I suppose, and
things absorbing things,
and even The Thing, they drop it in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. Granted, it does different things, but I thought it was pretty neat. I had low expectations for this. For whatever reason, I thought I had seen it before, and I had not. I had visions of the Blob just running over cities, and that does not happen in this movie at all. So I was more. It was better than I thought it would be, I guess, is kind of where I'm going with it. I was distracted by Steve McQueen playing a teenager at the age of 28, looking 48. But Sean's right. I mean, he is a good actor, a great actor, and commands the scenes, but still doesn't change the fact he's playing a teenager.
Agreed. I found myself enjoying the monster moments of this. The special effects from 1958 were actually kind of impressive. I thought it would be a bit more stop-motion animation than it actually was. And I did watch this in HD as well. I decided to spring for it and see if that helped. And I think it did, because it does make the film look a little better, not so B-movie-ish, even though it is clearly a B-movie. What I was distracted by was there's just not enough of the monster. And in fact, there's too much conjecture about whether or not Steve McQueen and his girlfriend are telling the truth throughout the whole film. And you've got one cop that really keeps saying, "Oh, now you've done it this time." And they say it 4 or 5 times throughout the film, where they go back on him and say, "Well, we don't believe you now." I'm like, okay, I'm a little bored by this whole not believing thing. And it's only an hour and 25 minutes long, too. So you've got 5 doubts, from the police in this film in that short period of time. But the special effects are kind of cool. And I like that idea of something that's unstoppable that you can't quite understand. I guess you could say I am glad that I saw it. But in terms of the effectiveness of other monster movies. Not that this is part of, say, like the Universal Monster series, but in comparison, something like King Kong, something that's considered a classic, I would rather watch King Kong like 10 times out of 10 over this. That doesn't mean that I'm glad I'm not glad I saw it. I am, but I think this will be the last time for me.
I definitely think I do think this ranks with the MGM monster movies. I think this does rank in the same way that Frankenstein and Dracula and those characters. I think it's a fair spot for it. I do think that The Mummy with Boris Karloff ranks well above all of them in terms of being a genuinely great movie, followed by Bride of Frankenstein as a weird sort of art film. But Frankenstein and Dracula rank right along this one for me.
And I guess I'm somewhere in between. I think the vision I had in my head of the lack of the monster actually worked, and I think it caught me off guard. I was expecting more, and to the point where I was like, "What are you going to do with this? It's a blob, you know?" And I was just kind of impressed with what they did. But I agree completely with you. At times, it was just repetitive and almost like the timing. I don't know. It just kind of. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was just a lot of Saved by the Bell type stuff.
A little clunky.
Right.
A little clunky. But the
ending I thought was fantastic.
I was just about to say the ending is probably the peak moment of the film, and you've got some action going on there and some quick thinking by Steve McQueen's character and trying to figure out what's actually going to stop this thing, and then everyone working together to solve it. That's is actually kind of neat.
They avoided the most obvious Cold War reference to at the end, which I thought was funny.
Drop it off in
they drop it in the Arctic, but I mean, they should have dropped it in Siberia if they really wanted to really.
That's kind of that's what I was thinking. I guess because of the vision I had of what I thought this movie was, part of me thought they weren't going to figure it out and it was going to spread and take over the city. And at that point, I'm like, that would have been pretty cool if they lost.
Yeah.
But still, the way they did it immediately made me think of The Thing. And then even later on, I was just like, Annihilation's kind of like that in a different way, but still kind of in a neat way better than The Blob, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Number 18 in 1988. Squeezed and pulled and hurt my neck in 1988.
Squeezed and pulled and hurt your neck in 1988.
Well, 30 years ago, we've got the 1988 Blob. This one is mostly the same in terms of the plot. You've got a small town, a girl and a guy come upon the Blob, but as opposed to the guy being the Steve McQueen character that goes on and tries to convince everyone, well, that guy is just absorbed like within the first 20 minutes of the film, okay? And it's a spectacular death scene. And instead you've got the town like outcast, the guy from Across the Tracks, played by Kevin Dillon, of all people.
Johnny Drama.
Sure, and he and Shawnee Smith of Saw and whatnot, and Becker, that TV show, if you remember that, those two really are the ones convincing what turns out to be a government agency who actually placed the Blob on Earth. It's caused by them. Okay, so you've added another dimension to make the scope of the movie seem more important instead of something just falling from space, okay? I get it, but what it means is it takes that B-movie idea to that C-movie status, and all of a sudden I'm starting to check out. What this does better, though, than the original are the death scenes. I mean, the Blob itself is actually kind of a terrifying-looking thing. When it absorbs people, it seems to have some sort of acidic secretion going on where it will disintegrate most of the things it's involved with. The old man who pokes with a stick in the first film, and this one, half of his body is disintegrated when they see him at the doctor's office. I like all of the gore in this movie. That part's the fun part. That's the part that I was afraid of as a 9-year-old seeing TV ads for this film. But in terms of the story and its relevance to anything and taking it seriously, the original has this big time because they were taking it seriously at that time. This one, I think Chuck Russell, the director, he's enjoying the idea of making this kind of campy, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's better than the original. I disagree. I'm with you with the gore, but I also think it's stuck in the 80s gore too. I mean, not completely stuck, but it's somewhat dated. I would have much rather had like early Peter Jackson movies. Like if he did that with kind of a little bit campier and more disgusting but more fun.
Certainly.
How does it compare with Society?
Oh, I would take The Blob over
yeah.
Society. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean as a movie, yes, but I'm talking about the gore though.
Oh, I think The Blob is a little gorier, to be honest. Society has this rubbery thing going on where you can't really discern what's going on, and it looks a little fake at some points. And no part of The Blob was I thinking, boy, that looks really fake. It was definitely gory, viscera going on, and inside The Blob, the skeletons and everything. It was very discombobulated and unnerving. Interesting about this, I don't know if you caught this when you were watching it. I was thinking to myself, boy, one little monster over a town trying to overtake it, and people are arguing amongst themselves how to deal with it. This is kind of like The Mist in a way. And then I look at the credits, and Frank Darabont co-wrote the screenplay for this. So that's kind of neat, I suppose. You can see where some of his early passions came from.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up. I mean, I knew he was. I actually saw you write that on Facebook, so I knew he wrote it. But I didn't, compared to The Mist. But now that you say it, you're right. That's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, it's. You can go to YouTube and watch all the deaths if you want as well. They do have a nice video that shows every single blob death. But it kind of honestly begins and ends there in a lot of ways for me. But I feel like we're in the minority because I have read a lot of good things. People do seem to love this movie for whatever reason.
I think if you take the commentary and the seriousness, in theory, the earnestness of the first film and how it was made, and you combine it with the gore of the 88 version, then you've got, like, in total, a very, very interesting blob film.
Or just make Annihilation and beat them all.
Sure.
What else did Kevin Dillon do in 1988?
The third one, for whatever reason, I had it in my head as I came down the stairs, and I can't remember it, so maybe you could bring it up. But I'm remembering The Rescue, a 1988 film, has Kevin Dillon in it. And it's this weird story where dads from, like, the Vietnam War or Korean War, they're on a mission in North Korea, and they get captured. So the kids decide to try and get them out. The kids, because no one's doing anything to help them. That plot synopsis made me interested to the point of watching it, and then I decided to opt for television shows instead. I didn't want to pay the $3 to rent it. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get that figured out here soon. And the other movie was Vibes, Cyndi Lauper.
Oh, yeah,
Jeff
okay,
Goldblum.
that's why I didn't watch it. Number one, it's not available. So it's not on any of the streaming services at this moment. You can't find it. But also...
You hate Cyndi Lauper.
No, I'm a fan of Cyndi Lauper, and that's fine. But as an actress, I remember seeing TV spots for this movie and saying, boy, that just looks terrible. I mean, even as a 9-year-old, it just looked really weird. It appears that she and Jeff Goldblum play some psychics that are hired to do something to, like, exorcise the demons from this particular building. I just remember the trailers being decidedly awful. The film didn't do very well, and unless you're a huge Goldblum fan, then I don't think that you would even know what this film is. The fact that it's not available to stream, I think, speaks volumes.
I think there was a very... if I'm getting it right, there was a How Did This Get Made on this movie that's pretty funny. So if you could check that podcast, Paul Scheer and Jason Mantzoukas making fun of Vibes is probably better than the movie itself.
Probably. And Cyndi Lauper's brief career as a lead actress ends here.
I prefer her wrestling career.
Still not in the Hall of Fame.
That's a travesty.
Kid Rock is.
Don't remind me.
So is Mr. T, but he should be. Next week, that is our show, right? I think that's all from 88.
Yes, it is.
Next week, Young Guns turns 30. So our top 5 is the cast of Young Guns. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to talk about Young Guns.
We'll go down in a blaze of glory. Oh, that's Young Guns too. Sorry.
He doesn't say Young Guns 2 in the song, does he? He just...
No. That would have been awesome.
But that's something I could see him doing.
Yeah.
All I'm
Anyway.
a young gun too somehow worked into the lyrics.
I could
That's
see.
as far as I know, he doesn't say Young Guns.
He does
or
say
Young
Young
Guns
Guns.
too.
He does.
He
Yeah,
does
I'm
say
a
young
young
Okay,
gun.
because sometimes in that song, like not only with a hearing deficit, but also I can't hear what the hell he's
That's
saying.
literally the chorus. I'm a young gun.
Right. I was.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man.
I was
I'm so
pulling
deaf.
Metallica's Unforgiven 2, where he does say Unforgiven 2, and putting it in the Young Gun melody. And that's what I did. Not that anybody gives a shit, but that's what I did. But we'll also, the new movies, which I kind of want to see most of them. Well, I don't know. The Black Klansman, I want to see. Dog Days, I don't really remember what that is.
Ken Marino directing a large group of comic actors in a movie that's not getting great reviews.
The Meg looks fun enough. And then Slender Man, I don't think looks good, but I'm curious. Just because the HBO documentary was fairly decent. Actually, I haven't even seen the trailer for Slender Man. I know it's on. I keep walking in the room when it ends. I know I could just go Google it, but
I've seen the trailer. It looks like every other teen horror movie I've ever seen. The Slender Man thing doesn't really
they should do
anything
something
for
with
me.
the real story. But I know it's kind of probably in poor taste to make a movie about it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So with that,
What's our classic?
unless Josh decides to make it a blaxploitation movie, it is currently Jaws.
No, I think this is the once and final opportunity to use Jaws as our classic, for crying out loud. Plus, I'm already planning on showing it to somebody in my household that has not seen Jaws.
Oh, your son?
Nope, he's seen it.
I actually watched Jaws last night, and I was shocked to see that it's PG. This is not a PG movie, but it is rated PG.
From the director that helped PG-13 come along
Right.
because of Temple of Doom, but
There's a lot of blood and a lot of gore in this movie. It's not a PG movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about as PG as Texas Chainsaw Massacre could be, because a lot of it is kind of in your head. You are imagining a lot of it, but still, it's so. The thought of it should make it R alone.
There's a leg that just falls off a guy from the shark's mouth and drops to the bottom of the sea, and the guy's face, the corpse's face in the boat. Those are pretty good scenes.
take
Pretty
the
good scenes.
beginning, too, with the nude woman swimming out in the middle of the water, and if you watch that film in HD, you can catch it a little bit. And
You hit pause at the right spot, right, Josh?
I have the soundtrack on vinyl, the original soundtrack from 1975 on vinyl, and you can see her boobs on the cover of the soundtrack.
On the vinyl while you're listening to it. And you close your eyes and you lay down and just think about it.
the important parts of Jaws.
Oh, that's funny. My son has never gotten through it. He gets too scared, and he kind of wants to see the Meg, because every time we go to the movie, that shows that trailer, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go see it." But he's always like covering his eyes. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I've tried to convince my son to go see that in IMAX 3D, because I would spring for that because it's this movie. I have some sort of weird affliction where I have to see this. This has been in production since I was first working at a job and was reading a movie magazine in 1995. And so I've been waiting for this movie to come out, because what would be worse than Jaws? A bigger shark.
But it looks like the kind of fun that Piranha 3D should have been.
Sure, yeah.
Because that was just, I don't know. Yeah. It wasn't that funny. It wasn't that. It just.
But if you're watching it in 3D and all of a sudden Jerry O'Connell's dick comes flying at you, then it does become a movie that you remember.
Well, you definitely remember it, but I'm sure Sean remembers movie 43.
It's not in a good way.
I still have that scar, yeah.
But yeah. So that's what we're doing next week. Our classic is Jaws, finally. Not going to do a blaxploitation. Then, yeah, let's just thank our Patreon supporters and get out of here. Up here are Key Grip Levels, Jason Bryant, and Charlie Messing.
And then another.
Our character actors, Cousin Jeff, Christina Cato, and Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, Sarah Ward and Corey from Ivy Envy.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer is Jason from New Mexico.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars are Uncle Jeff and Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net /Patreon and get yourself a credit on the show. We will be putting a PayPal link up too if you'd rather just purchase the bonus episodes. I think I'll make them $1, minimum $1, but you can give whatever you want. And then I'll figure out how to get those to you. Probably some password protected link. But on Patreon, you can actually put the RSS feed into your podcatcher, and it'll actually, every time we release one, it'll automatically pop up in your podcatcher. So it's a pretty neat little thing, and I don't know, hopefully our Patreon supporters enjoy the bonus episodes. If you don't, let us know, and we'll try to adjust accordingly. We got a time travel one coming up that Josh has spent a lot of time on, and I've spent no time on.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and which films should be involved, and have watched a number of films over time. I've got some halt in the action now. I'll get back on it this week.
See, my favorite one doesn't even really address any science behind it. Just the end all, and it's like, oh, it's real.
I know which one you're talking about.
Safety not guaranteed.
Oh. Yeah.
But there's no science at all with
no
time travel. But yeah, that's our show, and come back next week for Young Guns, or stick around for Flickchart. We'll see you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody could have. I mean, the three best friends that anybody could have. That's right, the three best friends.
You guys want to play Flickchart?
Sure.
Yeah. Do we have anything we want to run through the... Or do you just want to play?
I don't think the Blob would do very well. So.
No. How about Ghostbusters versus Click?
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. Sure. All Ghostbusters.
Carrie or The Notebook, 1976.
The original Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah, the Carrie.
Yeah, it's Carrie.
I agree. Wanted, 2008, or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Agreed.
Crocodile Dundee, True Lies.
Crocodile Dundee, I guess.
I agree.
I'm going True Lies. There's at least a couple of good moments in that movie. And how's my internet doing? That's saving the Crocodile Dundee choice we made. There we go. Gladiator. Wait, that just refreshed on me. Deep Blue Sea or Beer Fest.
Another fishing with Gandhi choice here. I guess Deep Blue Sea just for Samuel L. Jackson's death.
Yeah, which scared the shit out of me. I was sitting in the front row of the theater, man.
Everybody in the theater got mad at me because I busted out laughing. I laughed so hard.
I'm sure somebody laughed at me. But if The Meg is half as fun to me as Deep Blue Sea is, then total success for me. I'd be fine with it. Deep Blue Sea in this choice.
Whose death's better, Samuel L. Jackson's in this or Brad Pitt's in Meet Joe Black? And did you laugh at both?
I did laugh at both. But
but the theater was empty for Meet Joe Black.
Yeah, but Meet Joe Black was such torture because he dies like in the first 5 minutes, and the rest of it is just this turgid, overlong mess of a movie that it was a death march to get through the rest of it. So it's definitely Deep Blue Sea.
I'll have to remember that I bring Meet Joe Black as a classic. No, I will. I
watched
like
5
it,
minutes
but
of it.
I will go with the Meet Joe Black death scene. Both times, though, I remember exclaiming, "Holy shit!" with both of them.
Movies just don't do that.
No.
Lord of the Flies, 1990. Desperado, 95.
Desperado.
I agree. Lord of the Rings, Desperado. Just trying to kill time while we talk about 12 Monkeys or Run Lola Run.
Ooh, that's a good one, man. I love both those movies. Gosh, I'm actually gonna go Run Lola Run. Even though I love 12 Monkeys, I think Run Lola Run is actually more entertaining to me.
I agree. Tom Tykwer, one of the directors of Cloud Atlas, I remember seeing Run Lola Run like almost 20 years ago now. Completely out of nowhere. It was one of the first indie films that I'd ever seen. It's really incredible.
Speaking of 12 Monkeys, did you guys see the roast of Bruce Willis at all?
No, not even a little bit.
Oh, Kevin Pollak gets up there and is Christopher Walken and just kind of reviews 12 Monkeys, and it's pretty amazing. But I don't do a Walken, so I'm not going to try to tell the joke. But yeah, you should at least look up Kevin Pollak's part of the roast. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or Panic Room?
I don't love Bill and Ted. I don't love Panic Room. Bill and Ted? Kind of.
I'll go with Bill and Ted.
I think I'm with you. I feel like Panic Room should be a little better. I think that's my biggest problem with Panic Room.
I'm with you right there, yeah.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico or Blazing Saddles?
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles.
I do like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, though.
I do too, but Blazing Saddles like up there like one of the greatest comedies of all time.
Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 or American Pie 2?
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I probably didn't see that one, so I won't vote. Sideways or The Cable Guy?
Sideways.
Sideways.
Fargo or Coming to America?
Fargo.
Fargo.
Yep. American Pie or Cruel Intentions?
American Pie.
American Pie.
That was quick. Hate Cruel Intentions that much?
Oh, yeah. It's terrible.
Not very good. Yeah.
And then on top of that, at the end of the film, they use the Verbs of Bittersweet Symphony to, like, play off Reese Witherspoon's character or whatever. Like, oh, you're going to make this movie, you're going to shine the shit off with a great song? No, I hate that
great
movie.
song that they had to pay the Rolling Stones for.
Well, I don't care who did it. Like, it's just really good.
Oh, I know, but they tried to claim that they wrote it and then had to pay them a bunch of money.
I remember when I looked at the writing credits for that, right? And I'm like, M. Jagger. But I'm like, what the fuck? That's the Rolling Stones.
It sucks to be a one-hit wonder, and then all your royalties go to them.
Yeah, they haven't done anything else that I've liked.
Hot Fuzz or A Bug's Life?
Hot Fuzz, kinda.
I'll go with A Bug's Life.
I'll go Hot Fuzz. I kind of like that one better than Shaun of the Dead. Not that we were comparing those two. Mrs. Doubtfire or Disturbia?
Fishing with Gandhi? No, I'll go Disturbia.
I haven't seen Disturbia, but I've seen Rear Window, and that's what it's based off of. Yes,
Yeah.
kind of, sort of. The other one.
I think I saw. What's this? Who's in it? I can't.
Shia LaBeouf. And I don't remember the girl's
I know
name.
I've
Julianne
seen
Moore? Is she? Oh, that's Eagle Eye. Never mind.
I know I've seen it. I just don't remember it though. But I remember Mrs. Doubtfire, so I'll take that. Batman '89 or True Lies?
Batman.
From Hell, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
From Hell.
From Hell.
Love From Hell.
Did you know Scott Mosier directed the new animated one coming out?
What? Really? It's weird.
Poor guy. Hopefully it makes money. He can keep making movies. Oblivion, 2013, or Mars Attacks?
Oblivion.
Mars Attacks. Oblivion's a beautiful movie to look at, but
I don't remember it.
So what do you think of Mars Attacks?
I like Mars Attacks. Enough. Blade Runner or Zodiac?
Ooh, that is tough. That is hard. I love Zodiac. Those are some incredible performances and a great story and some fantastic Fincher direction. Blade Runner, is a classic. By just a little bit, I'll go Blade Runner. Just a little bit, though. Zodiac's underrated.
It's Blade Runner by a hair as a film, but genre-wise, I've got that one locked in every time.
Yeah, I think just coming to the fact that Zodiac's so damn long, I'm more likely to watch Blade Runner. Howard's End or The Never-Ending Story.
the British counting matchsticks movie, or or that story that just does not end and does not end. Howard's End.
That one ends. Take the Never-Ending
That is
Story.
funny. I'm just going to refresh. I'm not going to make a decision. The 40-Year-Old Virgin or Psycho, 1960.
Wow. It's Psycho, but I love 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah.
Psycho.
Although I watched that recently, it's still funny, but it definitely is already aged quite a bit, which is unfortunate. Shaun of the Dead, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh, it's Eternal Sunshine by a
Eternal
lot.
Sunshine.
Donnie Darko or Superman 78.
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah. Underworld or What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Because Underworld really sucks.
Yes, it does. I agree.
The Simpsons movie or the Osterman Weekend.
I don't think anybody's seen Osterman Weekend for the most part. I mean, I think I have, but I don't remember it.
The Simpsons movie or Alien Resurrection.
Simpsons movie.
Simpsons.
True Lies or the Royal Tenenbaums.
Royal Tenenbaums.
True Lies.
It's the one, the Wes Anderson movie I actually like. Anchorman or Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders, the
Anchorman.
Best Picture winner that should have been.
Should not have been nominated. Any of those movies should not have been up for anything. I don't know what else came out. I can't remember. But I saw that list of 5. I'm like,
Chariots of Fire was one of them.
well, yeah, that one.
Boo.
Right. That's boring as fuck. And
Oh,
doesn't.
my God.
When's that going to be a classic?
Yeah.
Next one is a running movie.
Maybe make that a classic around the same time as Meet Joe Black, and I'll just take my own life.
There you go.
Next week. All right, we can be or Deep Blue Sea or The Crow.
The Crow.
The Crow.